Good morning, everybody. Here we are at 5:22 a.m. on January 4th. I have a really cool concept to talk about today, and it's something I spent most of my day actually trying myself, so I'm excited to actually share my takeaways. Again, only having this thought and then acting like one day, or having done it one day. But the concept is, what if you acted like your life was a movie? And what I mean by that is, what if we just pretended that there was film crews here, everyone was watching, you're mic'd up. How would you act differently? How would you behave differently? I don't know. Everybody has a different story. Everybody is a different character, but in your story, in your movie, you are the main character. So imagining this, that everyone is watching you, because there's some neuroscience about people watching you and you kind of leveling up. You have a little bit more reason to be your best version of yourself, is that social side. But there's also, on the neuroscience side, the mental piece of just that mindset of just being your best self. So I want to dive into unlocking this idea and why it works for people. And I want to tread lightly on when I mean acting, because I'm not trying to say don't be yourself. I'm trying to say become your truest self. Be the character that you want to be, that you've been thinking about this whole time, that you're I'm never going to be whatever, X, Y, and Z, that person doing that thing, because you're that's not who I am yet. You just start acting like that person, and all of a sudden you have a little more swagger, a little chip on your shoulder, or there's something to be said about the way you act when you feel as if you have to upkeep this certain type of personality. But like I said, on the reverse, listening to someone like Jim Carrey talk about how he went from acting, from when he was a young boy, acting, making people laugh, to not, going through depression and trying to figure out who he is. So, and he's amazing. He is I'm not a people pleaser anymore. He can do whatever he wants. I'm I love that. What I want to say is that there is this powerful idea of living your life like it's a movie. Let's dive into it. When you do this, you are activating the same brain systems that you use for learning, identity formation, and future planning. Okay? Your brain doesn't strongly distinguish the imagined experience versus the real life experience. We know that, right? And if we don't, that is why visualization is so key, and why people like athletes or anyone who is in the performance world literally closes their eyes and visualize themselves doing the act before it happens. The reason for that is because your brain, like I just said, does not know the difference between the lived experience and the imagined experience. So if you didn't know that, please listen to that piece again. It is so important for you to imagine it before it actually happens, because then when it actually happens, you're already prepared for it. That was a coaching philosophy that I used with my players back in the day, and we were winning championship after championship because I did visualization with them. There's so much about lived versus imagined, and how that's your brain's happy place. It doesn't know. It just wants to be there. So imagine that. Anyways, okay. So when this happens, right, the key systems involved are the prefrontal cortex, which we know are decision-making and planning, motor cortex, which is action stimulation. Okay, so we're going to get into some movement, as I was talking about walking and talking and how the creativity starts to flow. And then default mode network, right, which is your self-narrative, identity, and future self. So we're going to talk about those systems that are involved in this concept of your life being a movie. When you imagine yourself acting confidently, succeeding, and being admired, the same neural pathways fire as if you're actually doing it. This is called mental stimulation. So when you act like the main character, your brain says, this is who we are becoming. Adjust behavior accordingly. It will start. If you act as if you are this big time CEO running a multi-million-dollar company, imagine there's cameras falling around your house. They want to do a documentary on you, the entrepreneur, the founder of this company. what your day-to-day looks like. Like, would you be proud of what you're putting out? That's kind of the question. And if you're not, then your behavior would adjust accordingly. If you're like, mean to your kids when they wake up in the morning, which happened to me 3 days ago, it's like, I probably don't want to put that piece out. So I'm going to change my behavior so I don't do that. Whether it's like, getting a workout in. Yeah, I want people to see that I'm doing something creative, right? I'm podcasting, I'm walking and talking, I'm learning. Like, this is something I'm proud of. So yeah, come see it. If you just slept in and were lazy and you ate like donuts for breakfast like every day and you were sloppy and messy, yeah, I don't think you'd want that either. Like, I don't think you'd want that put out there. It's like, that's not who we are. That's not who we want to be. So just change the behavior. Identity drives behavior, not motivation. So I want everyone to think about this for a second. I am not trying to be a motivational speaker. I just want people to think. I want people to think for themselves. And if I say something that makes you think, then you're on to something. And keep going with that. That's what I tell my high school students all the time. If I say something, I'm giving a speech, or if we're watching a video, take down nuggets of knowledge, right? Take down some key takeaways that are said, because there's obviously a reason your brain latched onto that. You can write that down. Remember that little piece, because I think that makes a really big difference. That's a sign that you should be listening to something else, or you should be diving more into that. And that happens to me all day long. I'll be walking around. I'll show this really quick. Yesterday, I'm walking around and I started actually a pad of paper that I'm going to keep right here. And I just kept running back topics, right? Ideas for different topics I want to talk about. Am I going to ever talk about those? No, it doesn't matter, because in that moment, I get a thought. I need to get it down on paper. I don't have to think about it anymore. Okay, good. It's written down. It's done. There's some neuroscience about doing that before bed. All the things you're worried about, write them down on a piece of paper before you go to bed. You will sleep 10 times better. And that's because you write down all your worries, so you don't have to think about them anymore. And if you have trouble falling asleep because you're thinking about all the things you have to do tomorrow, have it all written down next to you so you can relax and be like, I don't need to worry about it anymore. It's on paper and I'll deal with it tomorrow. Anyways, the identity drives behavior. This is huge because your brain is constantly asking, who am I? So the medial prefrontal cortex builds your identity story. So when you shift from I'm someone who's trying to get my life together to I'm the main character in a meaningful story, you will change your actions, or what actions you feel in that character, and what actions feel embarrassing or unacceptable. You will feel both, like I just used in my example about your morning routine. Are you a sloppy Joe or are you motivational Margaret? I don't know. You have to decide what your life looks like. But I thought that was super interesting, and behavior becomes self-reinforcing. You don't need willpower to be confident if confidence is now part of the character you're playing. So narrative equals meaning equals dopamine. This means your brain is addicted to meaning, not happiness. Let me explain. So when your life feels flat or overwhelming or boring or just not exciting, dopamine drops. Pretty self-explanatory. But when the brain detects progress, story, purpose, dopamine increases. For the example of what I'm talking about today, which is turning your life into a movie, creates a clear storyline. It is the story of you growing up, you becoming who you want to become. You start as a baby. You're on this journey, so the cameras have been following you since day one. Now imagine you know this. You just found out you're putting on a show for everyone in human form. All of a sudden you have this awareness that people care. You have this purpose. I wonder how you would shift your mindset. So going back to if you turn your life into a movie, creates a clear storyline, turns obstacles into plot points. So all those things you overcame, all part of the story, all supposed to be there, all something for everyone to watch, for you to overcome. Makes discomfort feel purposeful instead of threatening. Everything you go through has a purpose. I cannot stress that enough. It's not a threat. It's not going to keep you down. You just need to move around the obstacle, step over the obstacle. You got to get back up. Everyone is rooting for you. You can get there. You can be that story that everybody talks about, the movie that has the happy ending. The social brain, this is kind of a piece of like other people, because I know this whole experiment for me is about like this is interesting because like the social brain is always watching even when no one is. So humans evolve in tribes. Your brain is deeply wired for reputation and social evaluation. So when you imagine others watching and rooting for you, the anterior cingulate cortex, so that is the social awareness part of the brain, activates. You naturally regulate behavior upward, not out of fear, but out of pride and coherence. This is why people dress better when they feel seen, people show up more fully when they feel like they're witnessed, because you're using the brain's social accountability system in a healthy way, which I think I'm doing right now with this podcast. Is like, I'm doing this podcast, this creative outlet for me. I understand that I'm putting it out to the internet for the world to criticize, the world to judge, the world to also see and absorb. But I feel like it's allowing me, because of that accountability piece, because I know someone's going to be watching this, or maybe not, but even the hope, no one could watch this. I'd still feel fine doing it because it's the act of what I'm doing. If one person watches this and they say, oh, whatever, they get something out of it, or they're like, this girl's a Looney Tune, one or the other, like, I'm opening myself up for criticism. And I think like doing all of these things has allowed me to be comfortable with whatever outcome is out there. Does that make sense? Like, we are doing our absolute best. People are going to be haters. I made a post yesterday and it was just like a negative comment, and I wrote back being like, yeah, I'm so sorry I didn't think of that side. But it's like, people are out there just wanting to bring other people down. There were no comments on the video. There's like 2 views on the video, and some person had the thought like, I'm going to tell this girl how I feel. And that's people's outlet, and that's okay, you know? Anyways, I guess using the brain's social accountability system in a healthy way is what I'm kind of talking about. I think this would be helpful for a lot of people. Presence increases when you're in the scene. So when you frame moments as scenes in the movie, the hippocampus, which is where your memory is formed, engages more deeply. Your attention sharpens. Your emotional salience increases. This is why moments become more real and more memorable. Presence isn't forced, and it emerges because the brain thinks this matters, capture it. You collapse the gap between future you and present you. So most people fail because their future self feels like a stranger. This is really interesting part, because I'm going to do a freaking whole episode on this, because I didn't know this until I learned this all yesterday. Main character framing does the opposite. Main character framing pulls future you into the present moment, and your actions start aligning with the person you're becoming. This is known in neuroscience as future self continuity. I'm so embarrassed right now. The stronger the connection, the better the follow through. So why this is a game changer? I've got to get through this. I got to finish this, because that is wild that I can't say that word. Future self continuity. What is that word? Why this is a game changer, especially for entrepreneurs and creators. This is where I'm like tapping into this, right? Successful entrepreneurs naturally do this. They live slightly ahead of their current reality. Their brain is already rehearsing the next version of themselves. They act in a way that matches the story they believe that they're in. And they don't fake it, right? You've heard that phrase, fake it till you make it type thing. They prime their nervous system for growth, which I just thought was so cool. To wrap this all up, if you treat your life like a movie, you stop waiting to become someone and start rehearsing who you are already becoming. It has been such a pleasure talking about this today. This is something I'm super, super passionate about. I want you guys to think about this as you live your day like this if you can. What would the main character do in this scene? When you're in a scene, stop and think about that. How would this moment look if it mattered? Stop and think about that question. And what kind of story am I reinforcing today? If you ask those questions, I really think your brain is going to do some magic, and your behaviors are going to start to change, literally just because you put this thought and this mindset in your head. This is all the thanks. I am so happy you guys are here. I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful day.